Thank you. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Okay.
How's everyone doing?
You good? Can we have a show of hands? Thumbs up. Everyone's happy? Very good. I hope you had a great day.
If you're not exhausted after the long day today, well, you can take solace that this is the last session for the day, hopefully.
And the good thing is we're here to talk to you about drinks. So
nothing to do with transformation, nothing to do with SAP at all. All right, so as an introduction, my name is Tarun Bahal. I'm the D&T technology lead at Diageo, responsible for everything technical in the Voyager program. Voyager is the name of the program that we are running, which is business transformation combined with IT transformation program spanning multiple years. Starting off as part of initial transformation journey, we're doing ECC to S4 migration, which is to make things a little spicy, is combined with migration to SAP RISE as well. Okay.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you so much for joining me today on stage. My name is Andrew Worsley-Tonks. I lead the SAP business for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And it's my pleasure to be joined here with Tarun and to talk to you about the journey that we're delivering together alongside our friends at S&P for Diageo. So, Tarun, maybe you kick us off about explaining what is Diageo, a bit of background about what you guys do.
So I'm pretty sure not a lot of you know or ever heard of Diageo as a brand, but I'm pretty sure you've heard of our brands. So we are in the alcoholic beverage business. We're a CPG company, and we have over 200 alcoholic or 200 brands that we own. Some key figures, we produce about 40% of all the scotch that is produced in the world, just as an example. And we have some very iconic brands like Guinness, Johnny Walker, and so on and so forth. Right? We operate in about 180 countries worldwide, and we have over 130 facilities where we manufacture our products. So that's a little bit, very little bit in a nutshell about Diageo. Okay?
So let me talk to you a little bit more about the program, the context, how we actually kick things off. So there's three key components in terms of how this program launched. First and foremost, Diageo had spent a lot of time in terms of preparing, and therefore the vision that was set at the start was very clear. It was a hybrid migration. The intent was not to start again, but it was very much focused on business transformation, right? Change is at the heart of this program. Business transformation is at the heart of this program, and therefore the time that it may take to get to the ideal end state is something that was acknowledged as part of the organization, and therefore gave us clear ways of operating and navigating the program. The second thing is, alongside our partners at S&P, IBM have a very clear structured approach and method that we call IBM Rapid Move to really help our clients engage and execute these hybrid migrations while delivering that business transformation that so many of our clients are actually asking for as part of the move either to RISE, to cloud, or even to S4HANA. And then the third aspect is we've been very successful for many, many years. I think this is my 5th or 6th Transformation World. The very first one I was on stage with Vodafone. A lot of that success and the stories that we've had jointly together with S&P has helped us, A, drive the method, and these are things that we were able to share with Diageo as we actually embarked and started on that journey together. So, one of the things as we look at the transformation, we really tailor the approach to all of our clients. And if I look specifically at Diageo, there's sort of 4 key pillars that came out that were strategically important. I won't go through each of the areas, but process, let me start there. Diageo run on a global instance today. They serve 180 markets across their SAP application. They have more than 4,000 interfaces, and they have spent years harmonizing, improving, and actually merging a lot of those organizations and markets onto a single platform. And therefore, trying to slice that up and cut it up is A, very complex and something that they wanted to avoid because of the business impact, because they wanted to maintain that integrated supply chain. The second thing that I touch base on is people, right? As I said at the start, this is all about transformation. I'll explain to you how we actually execute the program, but first and foremost, it's about delivering the Diageo of tomorrow. And therefore, as we start the program, as we did the kickoff as a team, We started in 2048, right? 25 years from now, Diageo is 25 today. We are setting the foundation with this program for the next 25 years, and therefore driving process standardization, making sure that we're enabling the right technology decisions, delivering the best-in-class processes for the industry, and anticipating the next trends is really something that is at the heart of this program. Of course, as we look at setting that foundation, data is a key element towards that. We use a data-first approach. We're implementing MDG. We're working obviously alongside S&P to really set that new level of data foundation and the data structures that I'll talk to you a little bit more about later on. And then the last element is really technology. As we look at the shift towards S/4HANA, as we do the migration to RISE with SAP, making sure that we actually are able to do that without disrupting the business and maintaining clean core concepts as part of that foundation, and therefore delivering it continuously as we move throughout the subsequent waves, is really a key element to the success of this program, but also making sure that we deliver, what we need to do for tomorrow. So let me talk to you a little bit about how we've split this up, right? You see 3 waves on the screen. There's many more, right? This is a 5-year transformation program. We actually launched a joint press release between SAP, Diageo, and IBM at Sapphire in Barcelona. And therefore, here you see the first few years. Let me break it down for you just in terms of what some of the key components are. First and foremost, we have the MDG track. So I mentioned data first. We want to make sure that we are implementing alongside this first wave the MDG finance implementation, and we have subsequent deployments of MDG at a later stage. The wave 1 item, that's the green bar that you see up there, is really the core of the S/4HANA migration. And I'll just spend at least 30 seconds on this explaining the concept, and therefore you'll get how the subsequent waves actually work. But that wave is all about setting the foundation for the next 5 years. As we look at the key principles that we apply, clearly we're moving to S/4HANA. Clearly we're using that as an opportunity to clean up the core, to standardize processes, to harmonize data. We're using it to activate new functionality. We're removing custom processes, and we're delivering a lot of value for the business. And all of that may sound like a lot, and it is, right? Especially in the context of a big bang go live. So therefore, there are some key principles. As I started off, I was very clear that we are delivering as part of this wave 1 a very structured approach. First rule is if we can do this at a later point in time, right? If we can do this in a second wave or a third wave, we will do that, right? We will not put the big bang go live at risk. However, if it's something that has to be done, right? Is this a mandatory S/4HANA change? Is this a data structure change that we can only do when the system is empty? We would do it as part of that wave 1. So we've got these key design principles that allow us to navigate the program that are fundamental to that first wave. Wave 2, Wave 3, Wave 4, Wave 5, subsequent waves are all about unlocking innovation. New processes, harmonizing existing processes. Maybe just a few examples that I'll touch on is Diageo run part of their Scottish whiskey business on a solution called Syncom, and part of their North America Scotch business on ECC today on a solution called Bliss. Right? We could have gone, hey, we'll just merge that and simplify it and standardize it as part of wave 1. We don't want to touch the supply chain as part of a big bang go live, and we want to make sure that we de-risk the program. That we are tackling in wave 2. Right? So there's a series of things there that we're prioritizing for the second waves. Cash management is another example. We're talking about intercompany trade flows, et cetera, all of those components. The innovation comes in the subsequent waves. One thing that Diageo did very well is, as part of the initial program preparation, they ran a series of workshops with the business to identify what are the key initiatives, pain points, challenges that you really want to address over the next 5 years. And that's how we came up with what I call the list, the famous 97. And these were 97 business requirements that we were then able to prioritize per wave to say, if we want to do these, do they have to be in wave 1? Should they be in wave 2 if they deliver value early? Do we move them to wave 3, et cetera, et cetera? So that's at least a little bit of context around the program, how we set it up, and how we're executing in terms of the delivery. Tarun's going to talk to us a little bit more about the building blocks, how the solution comes together.
Okay, so let's talk about what methodology are we using and who our partners are. So we, of course, are partnering with IBM and S&P and SAP and a few others like SmartShift, who are actually presenting right now on the other side of the stage, and there are a few other partners who are supporting us throughout this journey. Now, we are doing, as Andrew was mentioning, we are using S&P's capabilities to actually support us with this migration, and there are certain aspects of migration that can only be done with the approach that we are actually following right now. So we started off with doing a technical migration where we are taking a copy of our current ECC systems and creating an empty copy of that. So we're creating a copy from a copy which is without any data. Now that allows us to quickly migrate to run a conversion to S4 because there is no data, so that is a very quick conversion. Now, in order to even be able to create a copy without any data, we are using S&P tools there, which basically, when we say a copy without data, there is no transactional data, there is no master data, but it still brings in all the customizing and all the enterprise structure and the organizational structure that exists in ECC is still brought over. And that's what is accounted for also during the S4 migration. Once the S4 migration is done, then SmartShift gets involved. They support us in doing all the custom code remediation to make it S4 compliant, plus anything that has been legacy in the system to help us identify duplicates and to set up a clean core and so on and so forth. Now, once that task is done, we are in a state where we have an S4 system which has no data, where the custom code has been remediated. This is a system then that we are able to bring to RISE. We take a backup, restore it over to RISE. So we have now an empty S4 system running on RISE as well. And this is where S&P comes back into the picture, wherein they start extracting data from the source system. And they have certain rules to transform the data from ECC structures to S4 structures, and they start loading data onto the empty system on RISE. And that's a process that runs for a few weeks. We have done this the end-to-end execution now, and we have one of the slides. We'll go through that process as well. And once the data has been migrated, we hand over the system to our testing teams, who will run a series of tests and validations, and they'll also do reconciliation between the data in ECC and in S4. Beyond that, once the data exists, we have an up and running S4 system. Now that can then be handed over to functional work streams to do further business process redesign. So that's the process in a nutshell. It sounds very simple. It has taken us almost 6 months to get the first wave running because of a lot of other complexities. But that's what the process looks like at a very high level. Okay. Now, to talk about, so we talked about how so far in the last slide, we looked at how a single instance of this migration would look like. Now, in order to optimize the process, and I'm not going to go into all the details here, but what we are doing is our plan was we'll do a proof of concept, and that's what we have done now. We started off in December. We've just finished it. So that was our test migration, the first test migration where we have done an ECC to S4 migration without taking into account any of the changes relevant to the famous 97 list were incorporated. We wanted to make sure that S4 migration works, S&P's tools will work. We are able to connect and set up our network integration between our network and SAP's SAP managed RISE network. So all of the foundational work was done. So that was our first test migration. Then we are going to, so this also allows us to do all the technical validation that had to be done. Now, subsequently, from next step onwards, we are going to do series of mock runs. Now, these mock runs will then include data transformation, not just ECC to S4, but this migration of data will also include transformation where needed based on the changes that we want to make. Things like chart of accounts, things like profit center hierarchies, we are going to adopt and let's say, harmonize our enterprise structure as well. So all of those changes will be incorporated in the mock runs going forward. Now, so we will be doing mock runs apart from the development system. We are going to do full data loads from production copies for our systems in a test environment, which will then be used for our SIT1. We'll repeat that process again for SIT2, and then another one which will, and that data would be used for our UATs before we are prepared and ready for go live. Now, even between completing our UATs and the migration for go live, the final productive migration, we'll still be running a few dress rehearsals where we'll be doing data loads again into an empty system. Now, the purpose of doing this is, and we'll present some figures as to what figures we have come up with or what we were able to achieve in our first POC migration. One of the purpose of doing this repeatedly is to make sure that we're doing things correctly and we are able to fix any of the issues that we identify in the previous mock runs. And the second reason is for us to be able to optimize the time it takes to export the data, transform it, and import the data. We have to remember that we might not be able to do near zero down, we might not be able to adopt near zero downtime approach, and we might end up converting the entire 6 terabytes of data that we have in ECC today over a cutover window. Our cutover window will be 72 hours. And looking at the ramp down and ramp up and the validation activities, we'll probably have around 36 hours for the data migration itself, which is across a network. So that's why these mock runs for us are very important to optimize and to come to a situation where we are able to size the systems and figure out the areas which are time consuming and look at ways to optimize those. Okay? Okay.
So let me talk to you a little bit about the process as we were executing this first trial migration. So this is that was based on a production copy, right? So as if we were converting the production instance, there's a series of other activities that were happening in parallel to that technical work stream. A lot of that was around design and process design. So I spoke about the famous 97, those business requirements. In addition to that, we used our IBM Impact solution that is SAP, CPG, industry best practice, a lot of IBM content, using some of the SAP best practices, and we reviewed all of that against Diageo's baseline. And throughout that process, we were able to identify, A, where there were gaps, A, where Diageo were deviating from industry best practice, where Diageo were deviating from SAP best practice, and also where there were additional opportunities for us to drive improvements. And therefore, there's a series of categories that we worked through. We came up with a list of, I think, 71 key design decisions as part of that, that allowed us to prioritize the wave 1, 2, 3, etc. Throughout that process. It's important to say that we really designed with year 5 in mind, right? One of the key principles of this project and all of these hybrid migration projects that we do is that we don't want to get to year 3, year 4, year 5 and suddenly go, oh, if we knew that then we would have done things differently. Right? So therefore, with planning with the end in mind, we know already what we're trying to do in year 5 so that we make decisions in year 1 and therefore accommodate the solution accordingly. So there's a few key changes, and just to give you a bit of a feel, as I said, there's many of them, but we're looking to harmonize the chart of accounts. We're activating parallel ledgers. We are, to Tarun's point earlier, completely redesigning profit centers, cost centers. We're looking at product hierarchy. So again, just going back to my example around best practice, Diageo use a level 5 for something different than what SAP best practice or the industry best practice is. So we're looking to reshuffle some of those. And as you can imagine, in a landscape that covers across 180 markets and 4,000 interfaces and thousands of applications, every time you do a data structure change, the ripple effect across the organization and across third parties is actually quite significant. So therefore, we need to make sure that as we make these changes, we're also managing the design impact and the integration impacts across all of those items, and that can be outside of SAP, but it can also be within the SAP system itself. There are other components that we looked at as part of the migration that are new functionality, right? SAP are releasing new functionality around intercompany processes. Diageo call this brand matrix within the organization, and therefore we want to adopt that. They have a full custom solution built 20 years ago. It was best in class at the time. There's every right reason to do so back then. If we were to do it today, we'd do it very differently, right? And therefore, as we look at the migration, as we look at phase one, actually trying to fix all of that code, redesign those processes, takes as much, if not more effort than looking at some of these standard processes and therefore adopting them as part of the Big Bang Go Lives. So there are certain items that we're actually bringing in early just because we don't have to do them, but it makes more sense to do them now, okay? We also are using this as an opportunity to standardize and harmonize the system. Old company codes, dormant company codes, no longer used, plants, payment terms, you name it. I'm sure you've all got them in your systems. It's like, this is really something that everyone has always wanted to do. No one gets round to doing them because there's always other priorities. Now is the time to do it, right? We've emptied the system. We have that opportunity. You engage with the business. You have transformation in mind. How do you anticipate and create a more flexible platform? It's by tackling these items now and removing that complexity from your system whilst that system is empty. Clearly, the mandatory changes within S/4HANA, we have to take them, right? And therefore, managing the change around that is super important. I will say, as we look at wave one and wave two, there's probably some of you thinking, well, what are you doing about Fiori? We're taking the mandatory Fiori applications. We're activating 50 to 100 additional Fiori applications. Those will most likely be in shared service centers because we can manage that change as part of a Big Bang Go Live, so predominantly finance driven. And then as we move into wave two, wave three, et cetera, we'll start to unlock those KPIs, drive more Fiori apps, and again, drive that incremental value as part of the subsequent waves. But wave one is really, how do we make sure that we are successful in cutting over such a large organization in one go over a weekend, so when people walk out, they come back in, there's significant change, the business does not lose a beat, okay? And then the last point is laying that foundation for the future. Right? Everything that we do, we stress test it against, well, what do we want to do in future waves? And in order to make sure that we capture all of those components, we created a phase called the sum of the parts, right? So if we assess each of these items independently, what's the implication? What's the risk level? And then when we brought them all together, it creates a completely different view on what should be done when, and how do we get prioritization from the CFO, from the CIO, and that changes the dimensions. So as you work through the work streams, everyone's got good ambitions. I want to do this. We think that there's business value. We bring it all together, we assess the risk, and then we reprioritize some of those items to make sure that we are successful in wave one in delivering the go live, and then we activate the innovation in subsequent steps. So Tarun, do you want to talk to us a little bit more about this first migration?
So there's been, I have to apologize, there's been some mess up with our slides. We've been updating slides last night, and apparently looks like we have missing data on this one. So I'm going to verbally tell you because I've talked about this quite a lot. So the way we've done this so far is from a timeline perspective. We signed the contracts with IBM, with S&P, with SmartChef, with all the partners. We rushed through them. We wanted to get them done in the year 2022, so calendar year 2022. So a lot of negotiation, a lot of last-minute contract signing happened in the second week of December. And 15th of December was when we had, in 2022, was the first call that we had with IBM and S&P together to kickstart the process to start creating the empty shell system. By that time, as a preparation, we had created a system already, a production copy. And so that's when, it was 22nd of December that we started the creation of the system last year. We ran into some hurdles. It was also Christmas period and New Year period, so the availability of people was a little bit of a challenge. But luckily, we got enough support and on-time support from everyone. we were able to continue without a lot of roadblocks. And it was in January that we had our first empty shell system created. This was a system where we ran some pre-migration configurations where the functional consultants were involved, the functional teams were involved, and we started off with the S4 migration of this empty shell. Now, it was in the month of February that we were able to complete the S4 conversion. And then we had to wait for our network integration with RISE to be able to bring the system back onto the RISE, and we took a backup, restored it. So in March, we had a system up and running on RISE, which was a converted S4 system, where we started doing the post-migration configs. And somewhere in early April, mid-April, we handed over the system to SNP. There was a lot of analysis done. After the SPAO and the custom code remediation was done by SmartShift, and then somewhere in April, SNP started loading data, right? So they had to also build a lot of rules, because you have to remember our ECC system is a system that has grown over the last 19, 20 years. So there's a lot of customization that exists, right? Like a lot.
A lot.
A lot. And we're trying to simplify all of that now. So they had to put in a lot of work. SNP did build a lot of rules and accounted for a lot of data elements, and there were a lot of alignment calls if we really need that data, or we really need all the custom tables and so on and so forth. But anyways, we were able to complete our data migration in the second week of May, roundabout. And the system was, so SNP did some preliminary checks. They did some preliminary validations, and they provided, and the system was handed over to our testing team. Now, what they had achieved by then, or what the project during this POC had achieved by then, was we had migrated 6 terabytes of data, all of it. It was not selective migration, because that's what we wanted to check as to what would it take to migrate everything one-to-one, treating it like a brownfield migration, like more than anything else. So that was 6 terabytes of data that was migrated. The report that we then received, it took overall, over a period of 3.5 weeks, it took about 90 hours approximately for the data to be exported from the source system, and roughly about 102 hours for the data to be imported into systems on RISE. So this was the figures that we came up with. When the system was handed over to the testing teams, they had prepared already a bunch of test cases and test scripts that they executed. We ran into some issues, which were very quickly supported and fixed, and issues and the root causes were identified. End of May, 28th of May, actually, we completed all our testing successfully, and we executed about 133 test cases, which included also reconciliation with the source system. So it was a successful POC. We learned a lot. We even learned what we had no idea about that we didn't know when we started the program. There was a lot of learning that we had. And this is the learning that we are now already utilizing in the subsequent system builds. We have already started with the actual productive landscape build, starting with the development system. We already have the systems on RISE, and we are restoring them currently. And then the SPAO and SPDD and the SPAO and custom code remediation will follow. And SNP is already preparing, and they have connectivities to our source development system. So they are preparing, already building rules to make sure that they are ready to start migrating the data the moment the system is handed over to them. So that's where we are at the moment. Next month, we also start with our next system build, which will be used for SIT, which will again be a copy of production. And as I mentioned before, from now onwards, our target would be to understand everything that we've learned, utilize that, as well as to identify all the possible avenues to minimize the export and the import downtime, because we have to bring it down to about a third of what we experienced in our POC. So that's been a successful journey so far.
Excellent.
So on that note, the timer says we have less than a minute left, but anyone has any questions that we can answer?
If not, we are happy to take questions after the session if you want to come and speak to us. But thank you for your attention. Hopefully you found that insightful, and yeah, happy to speak more later on. Thank you so much.